in Lagos and all our listeners from all over the world.
All right, we love it when you're a part of the conversation. So you can get in touch with us. Let us know what your opinions are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 440 981. You can also tweet at smooth981. The hashtag is freshly pressed 981. We're starting things off from Punch. Now, the Lagos State Governor has vowed to prosecute a truck driver and its owner over an accident which claimed 9 lives at Ojuelegba in the Surulere area of the state. Now, 9 people are reported to have lost their lives in this accident when a container on an articulated truck had falling on a minibus on Sunday. Now, in a statement by the Commissioner for Information and Strategy, the governor directed the relevant agencies to enforce laws guiding truck operations in the state.
Ah, another one. Practically every week now, if it's not a petrol tanker that is breaking down or blocking the roads, it's a container that has fallen down, or the truck itself carrying the container, you know, hitting something and practically almost falling across the road. Um, First and foremost, my condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. It's really really sad. This is, I think, the second and third on that Legba in the last 6 months. It's amazing where a government or the agencies who bully private individuals when they drive their car for not having their roadworthiness, for not having XYZ, turn a blind eye to what you know and you can't see are hazards, you know, just waiting for the accidents to happen. And then all of a sudden, the commissioner puts out a statement. Um, Relevant agencies to enforce law guiding trucks operations in the state. What have you been doing, or what have they done over the last God knows how long, whereby we're losing Nigerians every day due to hazards caused by vehicles and containers that are properly not fastened. You see some of those trucks moving up the bridge, and then you're wondering, when is it going to fall? When will it fall? How will it fall? Where will it fall? And then you come out and say you prosecute the driver and the owner. Implement and enforce the laws that govern these things. You don't tell, they shouldn't tell you and I that if we don't have an MOT, for instance, tomorrow now I'm going to go and do my MOT on my car because it's going to expire today. But you don't do that for public transportation, for truck drivers. And you have the impudence to tell us, oh, the agency should enforce the law. Are we joking or something? You know? And then innocent people sit down, enter a bus, waiting to depart from the bus terminal, and boom. It's just, I don't know, it's pure negligence on the part of the government. It's bad governance, it's bad law enforcement, and you just name it, and then you come back and say, oh, our condolences to the family. This could have been averted if you just do the right thing.
Right.
You would see some buses on the road, and then you're wondering, you don't arrest them for breaking the law, for driving past the red light without anything, causing potential accidents on the road. And we all just sit down and say, oh, obviously they run the town. That's what it tells me. And for the governor to be telling us today, I'm feeling like, very governly, because an election is around the corner, and telling us, oh, they should prosecute what's it called. It's not about the prosecution, it's about enforcing the rules and regulations that govern these trucks to move around. Some of those trucks should never be on the road.
That is true.
Not to even talk about them carrying containers. And we see it every day. The law enforcement, whether it's the state or the federal, and you just name it, they see it every day. Rather than do what they need to do, we know what they do. They turn the blind eye and harass, and that's what I call it, harass innocent Nigerians who, because of the fact that their MOT or their vehicle license has expired the day before, it turns into, oh, it's expired, and it's just sad completely.
So now the governor is saying that the driver and the owner should be prosecuted. But what about the agencies that are responsible for ensuring that these sort of vehicles aren't even on the road? Shouldn't there be some sort of punishment or penalty for people who failed in their
First and
duty?
foremost, there was another commissioner, transportation. Yeah, he should have, first of all, he should have been fired immediately. That, in my own opinion, because you don't make this kind of statements when those who are responsible for ensuring that this kind of vehicles are not on the road are still sitting there. Like I said, we all, as private citizens, we own our cars, or we have official cars, have to ensure that these cars meet the regulations for being on the road. Otherwise, you know we could just get delayed unnecessarily. But when you have this kind of thing, one happened at Ilasamaja. They prosecuted one that happened at Ilasamaja in 2020. Another truck fell at Ikpaja yesterday. You know, I think it was on Saturday. One fell on the Lekki Road.
Wow.
And it's just amazing. And you come out and make this statement. First, whoever is in charge should face the consequences. You don't do that and then you come out and say, oh, put out a statement. Anybody can put out a statement. What was the action? Who resigned? Who was fired? Because these are things, like I said, innocent Nigerians just being killed.
Let's look at some of the messages we've got coming through. Emo from Ikeja says, we don't want the governor to vow to prosecute anybody. Human beings have died, never to be seen again, throwing families into agony and grief over an unavoidable problem. Or avoidable? Okay. He should vow to implement and enforce laws instead of harassing private car owners every day. And Gary Newton says, good morning. This truck loaded this container from the port. What happened with the inspection agency? All of a sudden, it's the driver and owner's fault. Yinka says, I'm trying to pull that message up. Okay. Breaking news. One truck just rammed me out of the way, denting the driver's side of the car. Guess what? He ran away. And Wale says, honestly, Lagos State government should put restrictions on movement of trucks during the day and let them move from 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. These restrictions are already in place
That law has been in place
for decades.
Oh, at least 50 years, almost 50 years.
Wow.
It's 40 years.
We cannot continue to lose
that law
lives.
was passed in the 70s.
Wow, that's a very long time.
A very long time.
We cannot continue to lose lives of people due to negligence of these drivers and their companies. Okay, Dan Okuda says, in a saner climb, the Lagos State Commissioner for Transportation ought to have resigned by now, including the LASMA and VIO personnel. And Tayo says, the government knows what to do. They're just reactionary, never proactive. Businessmen will put a poorly maintained vehicle for use and do the accident is not my portion, but we'll tip the officers in charge. All right, let's go on to our next story. Don't forget, you can keep the conversation going on WhatsApp 0809 440 And this is from Vanguard. Former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Jega, has charged politicians participating in the coming general elections to uphold credibility and honesty to ensure a free and fair election. Now, he also expressed worry that the activities of internet fraudsters in the country may affect the strength of the Commission's website if unchecked.
It's easier to see the issues when you're outside than when you're sitting on that seat. And this is what I see about Jega. Although he complained that there was an attempted hack that was corrected on the day of the elections. I don't know which elections, whether it was 2015 or 2019. It wasn't specific. But when you say that poor voter education worries you, my question will be, what did you do while you were there? Voter education is not just before the elections. Voter education is a continuous process. Voter education goes beyond how you put your hand on the voter on the ballot paper. It starts from, once you turn 18, these are the things that you need to do. You go register to vote. You make sure you collect your PVC. You make sure your PVC is updated if you move from one place to the other. Not come during the elections and everybody puts out the ballot paper and says, "Oh, print like this, don't print like this." We don't have seminars. We don't have people who are speaking continuously about updating the Nigerian voters register. Yes, some people know and go and register, but these are things that should be coming out from INEC on a monthly basis. Once you turn 18, you can get to this place, you can register, your voters card will be ready in 6 months, XYZ ABC. So when Jega comes out and he actually ran to elections in this country and says um, worries over poor voter education, what has he done since he left to educate Nigerians on all these things I just mentioned? And like I said, it's easier to see all the errors when you're outside. And is it telling me that he didn't see all these things in the two election cycles that he conducted? It's amazing when it's always easier to criticize while you're outside, and when these criticisms are brought before you, you know you turn the other way and say, "Oh, they're trying to people are trying to get me away from my job, or trying to make them sack me from my job." And really, it's an interesting thing to say by the former INEC chairman.
All right, let's move on to The Guardian. The president of the Nigerian Bar Association. Okay, the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Yakubu Mekiel, has apologized to Nigerians for what he has described as failure of lawyers to live up to their responsibilities of offering guardians for the advancement of the country. Interesting.
Very interesting. I'm sure my learned friends will bash me after this, but that, to a very large extent, that's true. However, when you consider any profession, first and foremost is to practice the profession with all honesty, and ensure that your integrity and your honesty is not put to question. And let's also remember that you, based on the evidence or on the information that you have before you as a lawyer, that's how you go ahead and prosecute. Sometimes there are technicalities which you win on. Sometimes there are realities of the facts which you just cannot say. And that's why you hear every lawyer tell you that, "Tell me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so that I know how to go about the defense." But true, and it's not just the legal profession, it's all professions that should be providing some level of advocacy in terms of how governance is in the country. It's good that he's bold enough to have come out and says, well, they need to apologize. He's tendered the apologies to on behalf of the Nigerian Bar Association, his learned colleagues, and also and for me, it does make sense. We should see. You must defend your client if it comes to you, except you feel there is a, a personal issue for you not to be able to go ahead with that defense, and that's in your opinion, is not based on the legal issues that are on ground. So thank you very much, the president of Nigerian Bar Associations, and I do hope that we would see more lawyers who are carrying out a number of pro bono services towards advancing the knowledge of legal expectations and all. And for those who just don't have the resources to, for where it seems obvious that they don't have, there are no issues with them, but they could face penalties based on wrong, whether wrong investigations or wrong reports coming out of investigations.
Right, Taya says lawyers work for a fee and not free. Nigerian bureaucracy is frustrating and pro bono work is most exhausting. Pray for you, lawyers. Cisco Delgado says the problem with Nigeria is we always take things for granted. Now, in previous years, truck drivers only moved around at night. What happened? All the agencies involved in enforcement of the law should be prosecuted also. And this message is from Emeka, and he says the government has as much blood on its hand as the truck driver. This happens every year. When will we start placing some form of value on human lives in this country? We'll take a quick break and we'll continue the conversation right here on Freshly Pressed on the other side.
The best of everything in the morning, and more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Weekday mornings,
I think
6
we're going
till
to number
10.
three. No,
Okay.
that's fine.
You are an orchestra. Watching you
Gosh,
move,
yeah.
it's like
Getting
listening to
tired
a
of talking
symphony
about
of
this
body
country.
Sorry?
parts
So I'm
directed by
getting
your
tired of talking
instrument.
about this country.
When you walk, it is like
We
watching a
can't
G
give
class
up.
roll across an octave accented by a C sharp. When you talk, the cadence of your voice is a tenor
Every
saxophone,
year it just
making love
continues
to
to
the
go,
cello at perfect pitch. And you
just
are so
continues to go
smooth.
down.
That's why we keep it here on 98.1. This is just
There's no
music.
excitement
Signing
anymore
out.
to talk about anything.
Hi everyone, this is Ruby Gang, aka Soronia Ruby, and you're listening to the Smooth Breakfast Show. Do not touch that dial.
Smooth 98.1. This is Freshly Pressed. And just before we went on the break, we were reading some comments. And I've got a few coming through on YouTube. We're streaming the show live on YouTube, by the way. Demola says, okay, we're going to make sure that you can hear Wade properly. And Valentine says, a family of the deceased should sue the government for negligence. All right. Thank you for your messages. Now let's move on to the Daily Trust. And this one is something that has to do with a brain drain. The Nigerian Association of Resident Doctors, NAD, has enjoined the Federal Ministry of Health to expedite action on the one-for-one policy on the replacement of personnel. Now, the association made this call, which was signed by the president, and NAD has spoken about the poor response of government in domesticating the Medical Residency Training Act 6 years after it was implemented.
In as much as I feel for nah, the reality is, first and foremost, it takes at least 6 years to train a medical doctor. It's not just in Nigeria, practically across the world, because even across the world, you first have to do a first degree before you go to medical school. Similar to what you do with law, it takes at least, you know, 6 years across the world to train a medical doctor. The issue of the brain drain, like we know, it's also because of the fact that the economic times are not palatable. Government hospitals don't have the kind of funding that they require. So a number of our doctors, but are we going to end up with no doctors in Nigeria? That's not true. Um, Brain drain has continued to be, especially for the medical profession, has for me over the last 30 years, has, although it's continually increasing, because in the last 5 6 years the economy just hasn't hit home.
Mm.
So more people and young people are becoming more and more restless. They were already restless, and they're becoming more and more restless in terms of what they see and how they feel about, improving the infrastructure. So you don't blame them when, after spending sometimes 8 years in school or 9 years, not due to their fault but due to various strikes and all,
Mm.
then you come out, you don't get a job, and so on. So will the act change that? um, the residency training has always been part of the medical profession. So you do your 6 years, you come out, you do what is called a housemanship for a year, then you do your youth service. So technically, those things are in place. But today, what you see happen is, and without those, and the truth, the truth about it is that without doing at least your housemanship, you just might not be able to get out of and relocate. So those are things that need to be done. Do you have the adequacy of hospitals to do those things? Maybe not, because and so on. So let maybe if they sign the act into play, are you going to tie my hands and my leg to stay back in Nigeria? That's another question that needs to be answered. But if it thinks that we are going to run out of doctors, I don't think so. I do think that it's just that the rate at which we would be able to replace them will become lower and lower. So before now, I heard it was 1 to 6,000. So you might get to a stage of 1 to 7, 1 to 8, 10,000 before you start to see an improvement. When Nigerian doctors believe that they need to stay back, or those who have spent so long in outside the country and gotten the experiences are coming back into Nigeria to invest in the system. And you have other um, business people who want to invest in medical infrastructure and so on. But if you leave it all to government, yeah, you can sign the act, doesn't mean that I can wake up tomorrow and go. That's the reality.
But what would it take to make it attractive for foreign trained doctors or even Nigerian trained doctors who've had a practice outside the country to come back, or to even get people, private individuals, investing in the sector?
The ease of doing business is one. Investment, infrastructural investments in medical care. Are you with me? More transparency in the health insurance system, which will ensure that people know that if I do come back and put not just investment of money but investment of my time, I would see the benefits of it. Um, Power will be a huge influence on that, because you want to practice medicine and you don't want to run on generator 24/7 and having to do generator replacement every 24 months instead of every 4 years. And so there are a number of things. Are they also willing because of the level of insecurity? So there are a number of things that make people tell you, do I want to come back and invest in Nigeria? No. There's a huge, the same way you have a lack of infrastructure in terms of housing for Nigerians, you have a huge gap in the infrastructure space for medical hospitals. Plus, even getting the space for where you can build a large hospital that can cater for modern what's it called, it's almost impossible, because we know the agonies people have to go through to get land. Like if you go to one of the stories, you would see what I'm talking about, your moniles and those who claim to have legal rights to the land and so on. So it just takes a lot. We just need to, as Nigeria, we need to step back, bringing leadership that we believe will drive us forward. That's one, and it's all about leadership. Create systems that will run, not have individuals who become systems, and when they leave, the whole thing breaks down. So we just have to change our orientation about the way we see things, and the way we ensure that when everybody says, oh, they run into the UK, they're running to America, they're running to Canada, they work in a system and they wake up in the morning, they know that system works. It's not that when Wade leaves today, we're not sure what's going to happen. Are they going to pay us tomorrow? The incessant, or are they increasing salaries, or salaries have been increased and they haven't been paid? If you go down through that story, you would hear of some of the states that haven't paid salaries for the last year, 6 months. You would hear about the non-implementation of the agreed salary improvement, not to even talk about the unification of the, when I looked at the consolidated salary system, the acronym just makes me laugh. Mess. So when you think about it, so it's just a number of things, a plethora of things that we need to deal with.
All right, and we're moving on to Punch. Now, hoodlums are reported to have invaded a primary school in the Ipaja area of Lagos. The proprietors said the hoodlums were led by a certain individual who claimed that he'd won a court judgment to take possession of the land. Now, children were chased out of school by these hoodlums, according to the reports, and the proprietors thus say that the land was allocated to them in 1992 by the federal government, and they were unaware of any court case ongoing.
We just spoke about how we can improve medical infrastructure. Now we see at school, children are in school, you break into the school, you chase those in boarding school out. I can imagine the trauma they had to go through. You rebuild the fence and the gates, and then you turn it into your own. But like we continue to say, even if you have a court judgment, there is a process for serving a court judgment. And that process will clearly show that a judgment has been passed against you. What are the things that you need to do? How long it takes you to vacate the place? and so on and so forth. From the claims of the owner, they haven't seen that judgment. So why do you wake up in the morning and break it? It's and if you go down, they said, oh, they reported the case to the Yanokwaja police station. They were reluctant to go there with them, and so on and so forth. But my main concern were the kids.
Mm.
They're sleeping in school on a Saturday evening, and then boom, get out to where? It's just ridiculous. And this is what we're talking about. Government ensuring that people, whether you get a judgment in court or not, you should go about, you know, settling your differences more amicably, more peacefully. And if you have a judgment, then show it and let's know that there's a judgment, and let's kick that process off and go through it in the right manner.
Let's look at a few messages. Fabian says, I'm a consultant physician and I've seen a large number of colleagues and junior ones who've traveled or are in the process of traveling, including nurses. Thus, I disagree, as there are already teaching hospitals with departments that have shut down due to lack of personnel. A complete overhaul of the health sector is needed, but till then, it will unfortunately continue to go downhill. Daisy says, life is cheap in Nigeria. We'll shout and talk about how everyone involved must be punished, but deep down, nothing will happen, and trucks will keep on killing innocent citizens. Let's move on to the front page of the Vanguard. The federal government has cautioned youth in the country against irregular migration to Europe and other developed nations, and they've attributed the maltreatment faced by Nigerians abroad to this irregular migration. Now, the government says migrating abroad without basic skills could have serious negative consequences.
True. But these are the realities of life. It's not just Nigerians that are migrating illegally, you know. And when you consider the reasons for migration, most of it is economic, where you feel that where you are in your country, you can't, the economic level you want to achieve, you can't do that. But the truth is what has been said. If you want to migrate, there are a number of processes to go about it. However, you should also remember that it is easier to live in a country where you understand, you know the laws, you know the rules, you know how it works, than getting into a completely new place where, for you are an illegal immigrant. You have to stay under the radar, in quote. You have to do the kind of jobs that you think you should never do, but you just have to do those things to survive. So, do you go to the process? Yeah, of going through the legal means of migration. Yes, you should try that. However, do you have the requisite qualifications and the necessary requirements? But the good thing about it is many countries are looking for not just those who went to university, but those who have some particular kind of skills. So you need to be able to show those things and travel legally. So it could be a welder. I know at a point in time in Nigeria, we used to hire welders from outside Nigeria because it got to a point that new areas of welding came out, and we didn't have the requisites. We didn't have the people with the requisite skills. Now it's become much easier because there's been a training institute that was set up, and so on and so forth in the oil and gas industry. So these are there are huge opportunities for improvement, and the world of tomorrow is not about your university education. It's about the kind of skills you can acquire or the kind of skills that you can bring to the table, because there's a lot of handwork going on there, and we need to embrace that.
Right, we've got a message from Taiwan. He says, to a large extent, I agree with the submissions on the Ojueleba incident, but the design of the bridge is also a contributing factor. And Ian says, okay, Ian, I'm going to come back to your message. Mike says, there's a law restricting containers and trucks on the road during the day till 11 p.m. Yes, there is. Implementation, however, does seem to be lacking. But that is all the time that we have on Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you so much, Wade, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for always having me on the show. Have a great week ahead.
And thank you for listening. But do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast.
The headlines, the story.